It's time to focus our energy and center our chi once more. It's time to face the immortal trial of Shao Lao. It's time to enter the portal to Kunlun once again and finally discuss the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the Iron Fist. Welcome back to my Dragon Cave, folks, where we talk comics, movies, games, television, and of course, Iron Fist. My name is Evan, and join me on this journey into fantasy while we explore the live-action future of this beloved Defender. It's been 5 years now since we've last seen a live-action Iron Fist, and throughout those years, a lot has changed. We've seen the end of the Infinity Saga, we got the introduction to our very first MCU martial artist, and we even got the fearless return of our one and only Matt Murdock.
That's great. Thank you.
All centered around the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But will we ever see the return of any other familiar faces, such as Danny Rand, Luke Cage, Colin Wing, or even Jessica Jones? Personally, I believe the chances are high, and even likely sooner than we think. While it's no secret that all the Defenders Netflix series were rather underwhelming at times and even consisted of some filler episodes, these characters and these stories all had so much potential for greatness. And they still do, considering we have the MCU return of Daredevil. I think his introduction was clever, and it was a perfect example of how to bring that type of character into this ever-expanding universe. When they inevitably bring in the others, I would only hope that it makes sense and that they make it awesome. In order to break down my thoughts, first let's start with the storytelling. Charlie's character had in his return is that Daredevil Season 3 did not end in the biggest of cliffhangers. With Fisk being back in prison and Nelson and Murdock reuniting, the viewers weren't left with any unanswered questions and all loose ends seemed to be tied up. On the other hand, Iron Fist Season 2 had some major cliffhangers, which likely would have tied heavily into the cancelled Season 3 plotline. The final act of the series shows a humbled Danny Rand who gave up the fist in search of answers. On his conquest to uncover the mystery of Orson Randall, Danny and Ward both venture off to some place in Japan, where it is revealed that Danny not only regained the golden glowing fist, but now wields the power in both fists, and even learned to channel his chi into the bullets of his two firearms as well. Meanwhile, Danny's love interest, Colleen Wing, simultaneously possesses the fist while using it to clean up the streets of New York. She is also now capable of charging up her katana with these newfound powers. So, what does this mean for the future? Will they ever address these events for any of these characters moving forward with the MCU timeline? If it were up to me to decide, I would at least let the characters whose series ended on a cliffhanger come to a satisfying conclusion. And that doesn't necessarily mean they need to revive the shows themselves, as we've already seen a handful of Marvel characters whose story arc ended or progressed in crossovers such as Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, and of course, Bruce Banner. However, if they do decide to continue with a Season 3, I would love to have seen them go through with the plot that they were seemingly playing around with.
I mean, I love Danny Rand. I love Danny Rand. I love that character. I love everything about him. I think he's such a jewel. And so did Raven as well. And we really would just vibe out and geek out together about the prospects of what we could create with that character. And the second season was really all about course correction. Right, it was like, how do we just like change the course and the conversation around this show and just bring it up to a place that we can feel proud of, and then we can take the show in the direction that we really want to take it in. And I know that Raven especially wanted to kind of see like Danny and Ward off in like distant lands, like fighting crime and like having the kind of the guns and stuff, and the Orson Randall like taking on that kind of persona, and then Colleen would be in New York with the Iron Fist, kind of coming to terms with that responsibility, and then eventually over the course of that season they would like find each other again and kind of become whole.
It really does feel like the new team behind this show were determined to run the series back on track after the major course corrections that were applied to the second season. Iron Fist, Luke Cage, and Jessica Jones are the three series that I myself would deem as incomplete story arcs, whereas Daredevil and The Punisher both ended on a comfortable note that gives the writers who introduced them more creative freedom with the direction that they take those two. I think it should most definitely be a priority for them to at least address the past of these two in the upcoming Disney Plus series Daredevil Born Again. This all leads us to part 2 of my thoughts, and that is the casting. Now, say what you will about the Iron Fist Netflix series, whether you want to poke fun at the writing, or the bad CGI, or even the whiplash that they call fight choreography that we are presented with. Finn Jones pulled off the Danny Rand look excellently, and this applies to all 5 of the Netflix heroes. All were cast phenomenally. Aside from that though, what I'd really like to break down in this segment is how I would cast the MCU's Iron Fist. If you have any familiarity with the character, or you've seen the entirety of the series, you might recollect that Danny Rand is not even close to being Kunlun's first immortal weapon. As a matter of fact, the Iron Fist ritual origins go as far back as 1 million BC, with challenger Fan Fei being the first holder of the fist. It's very similar to the Black Panther mantle, as we all know gets passed down from generation to generation. So Danny Rand is only the most relevant Iron Fist, as he was the premier title character, has the most comic books, and was given the most detailed backstory. He is also the most popular since he has appeared in multiple video games and animation. Meanwhile, most of the other fists are either brought up in passing or referenced in the comics through flashbacks. However, Marvel appears to be moving in a new direction with the newest addition to the Iron Fist legacy. Lin Lai is the current immortal weapon and the first titular Iron Fist other than Danny Rand. He gained the powers in his own unique way and has been filling in for Danny ever since he left behind the fist in Kunlun. Lin Lai kicks ass as Iron Fist, and it would not surprise me if Marvel Studios decides to cast a young man of Asian descent to be Iron Fist in the MCU, given that they seem to be moving on to a new generation of all of their OG Avengers. As astonishing as it would be to see a new take on the live-action interpretation of this character, as I mentioned earlier, I would first prefer to see a conclusion of Danny Rand's story arc before moving on to a new version. So, this would be my pitch on how to bring Iron Fist into the MCU. Firstly, I would use Shang-Chi 2 as an opportunity to either reference Iron Fist by name or insert him in a short cameo. Not significant enough to impact the plot of the movie, but meaningful enough to illuminate the audience of the nature of Danny Rand. After that, I would bring back Finn Jones and Mike Coulter for a long-awaited Disney Plus spin-off series and title the show either Power Man and Iron Fist or Heroes for Hire. Both choices sound impactful and also call back to the source material. Lastly, aside from having Danny Rand appear in team-up titles here and there, in a similar fashion to Spider-Man's role in Civil War,
you have a metal arm? That is awesome, dude!
I would release a spin-off series, or movie, preferably series, and title this project Immortal Weapons. This project would finally give the writers as well as the audience an opportunity to explore the culture of Kunlun and fill us in on the origins of this ancient ritual known as the Trial of Shu Lao. As mentioned earlier, the legacy and the mantle of the Iron Fist goes back generations. This project would be a perfect way to articulate a hanging of the golden karate gi for Danny Rand, and also a passing of the torch in the classic Marvel Vogue. Now, this lineup is my brief but considerable idea or brainstorm on how I would conclude a satisfying and fulfilling closing arc for Danny Rand, but maybe not the Iron Fist character altogether, as all Marvel superheroes always seem to find a way to continue their legacy in some way or another. I'm also way curious to learn how all of you feel about this interpretation, or if you would do things differently. But ultimately, I feel this would be a smooth way of handling Danny's character moving forward, as well as a way of leaving potential room for future development for this Kung Fu mantle. And that just about wraps up my thoughts and opinions on how to cast Iron Fist into the MCU. This leads me to the third and final part of my analysis, and we like to call this part MCU Redemption. To finalize all these ideas and wrap this all up, it's a great idea to consider the contrast in tone and brightness that these versions of our defenders will likely have.
I did it because I liked it, and I loved it!
Aside from some characters such as Frank Castle, I'll be thrilled to once and for all see a more vibrant depiction of all these classic Marvel characters that originate as far back as the 60s. So if and when they do bring in Iron Fist and the others, I'd like to see them dressed up in their classic colors top to bottom, all the way from Luke's flashy chain and belt, to Danny's bright green Kunlun serpent-spangled uniform accompanied by a dazzling yellow bandana mask.
I'm registered as a lethal weapon.
I want to see these phenomenal characters brought to life unlike any other portrayal we have seen yet. As much as I appreciated these Netflix shows for what they were, the one common criticism that often came up was the lack of that wacky comic booky spark in the wardrobe selecting department. Now, to be more precise, what I'm specifically referring to when I say that is that we rarely get to see these superheroes in costume.
Nice ears.
They're horns.
It always felt as if the creative team behind all of these Netflix series were always apprehensive to go all out with the eye-popping suit designs that we all recognize from the comics. Having said that, the MCU on the other hand has very seldom disappointed us with their accurate depictions of their on-screen supersuits. Whether you preferred it or rejected it, I definitely have to admit it was pretty thrilling witnessing Matt Murdock sporting his iconic yellow and red debut costume in She-Hulk.
I'm Daredevil.
It really had me thinking and envisioning the potential of what all these others could look like if introduced to this world. I'm definitely confident that the MCU would present them in a more exciting attire than just a black hoodie. Now, in addition to the costumes, another great development that I noticed within the Marvel Cinematic Universe is its ability to recognize the strongest personality traits in each of their characters and make them pop and stand out more. We've gotten to see the more vulnerable and personal side of the Hulk, a witty and wisecracking Spider-Man, and even Daredevil is given an opportunity to show off his superhuman acrobatic skills, unlike anything we've seen in the original show. Now, I'm not saying that his cameos were preferable to the original show. I'm simply just pointing out the differentiation between the two, and it's fascinating exploring the contrast in tone.
I beat you!
My ass remains unwhooped.
And I think it would be tremendously satisfying to finally see Danny Rand in his prime form with his warm and calming Zen personality of wisdom and balance, who could also go toe-to-toe with Sabretooth if the time were necessary. All while decorated in yellow and green to complement his exotic background. And along with the wardrobe touch-up, it's finally time to get a more powerful Iron Fist. It's no secret that the superpower scenes, as well as the CGI in the Defender shows, were not the most exhilarating sides of the series. Therefore, we were never presented with exciting action scenes that showcased the potential of their powers in any sort of proper way. The budget was not very high, and so this unfortunately watered down the experience, resulting in the audience having to sit through hours of scenes where Danny attends board meetings or sits down in a room with each character explaining his origin story rather than showing us.
I'm the Immortal Iron Fist.
I'm the Immortal Iron Fist.
I'm the Iron Fist.
I am the Iron Fist.
And this all-tell, no-show technique may have worked out for some of them, but certainly not for this mystical character. Anyways, regardless of the situation, it's always fun to watch a well-put-together comic book action scene with just a little more pep in its step. And so I believe the budget in CGI, along with the exponentially better fight choreography, would be yet another potential step up from this character's previous portrayal. And finally, one more encouraging feature that this studio transition could potentially bring to us is the world-building aspects in their storytelling as a whole. Now, I want you to think back. Remember when Daredevil first came out on Netflix in 2015? And the marketing for this original series led us to believe that it was kind of sort of part of the MCU, but like, you know, not really.
Maybe if he had an iron suit or a magic hammer, that would explain why you keep getting your asses handed to you.
And this got a lot of fans anxious to see like the Avengers inevitably meet up with Daredevil in some sort of epic crossover event. Eventually, fans came to the realization that due to certain studio rights, it was obvious that these Netflix heroes are in their own little pocket universe, and we would likely not see them fighting Thanos alongside the big guys. Which was obviously pretty unfortunate, but you know, since then, a lot has changed, and this cinematic world has been increasingly expanding. Now the fans and the audience are fortunate enough to live in a time where we get to see these icons interact with one another and create memorable stories, and they really need to take advantage of this opportunity. I feel the quality in these movies declining throughout the past couple of years is solely due to the resources they are refusing to use, and they're failing to introduce more A-list characters that the fans have been craving. But I don't know, hopefully the return of Logan will turn the tables around. Finally getting to see Wolverine and Deadpool interact in the same film is going to feel epic, and I can envision the team up of other legendary duos such as Punisher and Moon Knight, Daredevil and Spider-Man, and of course Iron Fist and Shang-Chi. Just the overwhelming amount of potential behind what Marvel could do with the access of utilizing all these characters is super exciting, and honestly, it will be sickening if they let any of these opportunities go to waste. But yeah, that's really about all I have in me this time around, folks. If you enjoyed the content, any and all feedback is always appreciated as usual. I will be back very soon, so until next time, karate chop that kapow button and stay tuned. Bye bye.